Hello everyone. Welcome to today's session. So today we are going to continue our topic of chapter number 19, professional ethics and the liabilities of auditor. So in previous session, we discussed a lot of questions on the first schedule, okay, where we discussed various questions on various clauses and various topics. And how we are going to proceed today is again on the same approach. We will be taking some questions. I will be explaining the topic, and on the basis of that, we will do our revision of the topic. Okay. So uh, as we did in the previous session, and as I recommended everyone to go through the study material and go through uh, the second schedule, I hope you guys have gone through it, because that is most critical. Because whenever we will now discuss a question, you will be able to understand. If you've gone through that particular topic, you will be able to understand that what that topic is about. Okay. So now, before I venture into the second schedule, just one thing over here is that, see, the first schedule and the second schedule, as I mentioned in my previous session, the way you need to write is the way it is written in the law. These schedules, the clauses and everything are part of the Charter Accountants Act. So you cannot deviate from the way it is written. Okay, so remember that. And whenever you have to write in the answer in the exam, make sure that you write in a correct way. The quotations, the way you have to quote the entire clause, then part, then the schedule and the Charter Accountants Act for this particular chapter, please make sure that is in line with the law and in line with the way it is required to be written. Okay, so what we will do is we will take up a question, and then on the basis of that, we will then discuss the particular topic. So before I proceed, let me read for the question. Let me read the question for you guys. Okay, so the question is, DND and Associates are the statutory auditor for XYZ Limited. Audit of the company is pending for financial year 22-23 and 23-24. Due to a dispute between the auditor and the company with respect to certain proposed remarks by the auditor in the audit report for the financial year 23. So basically, there was a dispute between the auditor and the company, and because of that, because of that, there is some pending. The audit of the company is pending. Okay. Now, the company removed the auditor on 6/5/2024 in shareholders meeting, complying with all legal formalities. DND and Associates, after coming to know about the removal, intimated the registrar of the companies, okay, ROC, through the letter highlighting the points of the dispute, including non-existence of the fixed assets, bogus creditors, etc., for the XYZ Limited. Okay. Now, XYZ Limited complained to ICAI against DND and Associate for their above letter to the ROC. Comment with reference to the CA Act 1949 and schedules thereto. So here, there was a dispute on certain matter between the auditor and the company. As a result, audit was not being completed on time, and later on the company removed the auditor. When the auditor came to know about this, they filed a letter with the ROC specifying all the details, and based on that, okay, the company has now filed a complaint before the ICAI against DND, okay, for their letter to the ROC. You need to comment on this particular question with reference to the CA Act. So let me know your answer. What do you think, in this scenario is correct? Whether the company is correct or whether the DND and Associate is correct? Quickly. Anyone? Okay. So let me discuss one important part over here. See, there are two aspects of this particular question. Some student might say, sir, there is a reporting of fraud. because fixed asset, bogus creditors, non-existence of fixed asset. Now, first of all, understand under which particular provision, okay, the reporting is done. It is not something that you can do any kind of reporting. If you are saying it's a fraud reporting with respect to the fraud, can anyone tell me what is that section under which reporting of the fraud is required to be done and how it is required to be done? Anyone? Okay. So if I talk about fraud reporting, okay, if I talk about the way the reporting is done for a fraud by the auditor, it is done under section 143, subsection 12. Okay. Under section 143, subsection 12, for a particular auditor, okay, he needs to specify things which are there and he needs to file Form ADT4. So you cannot just, highlight points. Over here, what is done is highlighting the points of the dispute through a letter. It is not the ADT4, first of all. So if someone is taking a stand that this is a fraud reporting, okay, if someone is taking a stand that is fraud reporting under 143 subsection 12, then where is the ADT4? The another question will come is ADT4. Is it being filed? Answer is no. So this is not a fraud reporting. As a result, I will not count this as a fraud reporting. Okay. Now, if this is not the fraud reporting, then if not fraud reporting, then in that particular case, what this kind of reporting will be? Is it a voluntary or a mandatory reporting? That is something we need to understand. Okay. Now here, there was no letter, communication or requirement from the side of the ROC to report this. And again, here the reporting which is done is for the purpose of disputed matters. Disputed matters is not always equal to fraud. Remember that. Disputed matters is not equal to fraud. Yeah, there are disputed which is required to be resolved by the management, or in case if there is no information provided by the management, then it becomes a point of qualification or a modification in the audit report. But that does not mean necessary it's a fraud. So reporting to the ROC, okay, without any intimation of the ROC, without any detail requiring by the ROC, it becomes a voluntary reporting. So I can say as of now, this is voluntary reporting. Now, if this is a voluntary reporting, which clause do you think will get will be attracted in this scenario? Anyone? Which clause will be attracted in this particular scenario? If this is a voluntary reporting, then which clause will be attracted? No? Okay. So let's go to the particular clause that I'm talking about. Let's go to the clause 1 of second schedule of part 2. So basically, clause 1 of part 2 of the second schedule, basically, it is on the confidentiality. Okay. And sorry, it's on the confidentiality. And basically, what we need to understand over here is that in this particular scenario, whether there is a breach of confidentiality or not. So accordingly, we need to answer the question if there is a breach of confidentiality. If not, then it is fine. If there is a breach of confidentiality, then it will become a problem. Sorry, part 1, clause 1, second schedule. So what is clause 1? Clause 1 talks about discloses the information acquired in the course of professional engagement to any person other than his client, so engaging with him without the consent of his client or otherwise as required by any law for the time being in force. Okay, that means if you get any information, okay, if you get any information during your professional engagement, And if you disclose to any other person other than the client, or without the consent of the client, or otherwise required by the law, in that case you will be held guilty of professional misconduct. Okay, now the two parts over here that we need to discuss is, number one, consent. Either you can disclose with the consent, or you can disclose when required by law. Either you can disclose through consent, or you can disclose when it is required by law. Required by law means when it is asked for. If it is asked for and you provide that information, perfectly fine. That is required by law. You can disclose. In the given scenario that we were discussing, is it something required by law? Anyone? Do you think it is required by law in the given scenario? Yes, no? So if it's not required by law and if you still disclose, then it's kind of you are disclosing the information that you received during the course of audit or your professional engagement. Are you getting the point? So in this particular scenario, it will be counted that you are disclosing the information when it was not required to be disclosed. Okay, so you can apply clause 1 part 1 of the second schedule in this particular scenario, and accordingly D&D and associates will be held guilty of professional misconduct, because they are disclosing the information when they were not required to disclose the information. Let's see how we need to write the answer. Okay, for the answer, again, as I discussed in the previous session also, when you have to write the answer, start with the clause, the part, and the schedule. Do not alter the way they are required to be written. Okay, to the CAA Act. That's where first you quote your provision that a chartered accountant in practice shall deem to be guilty of professional misconduct if he discloses information acquired in the course of professional engagement to any other person without the consent of the client, or when it is not required by law. Okay, again, now you need to specify the current scenario. Okay, what is the scenario? That in the given situation, that D&D and associates, through their letter highlighting the points of the dispute, including non-existence of fixed assets and bogus creditors, okay, they disclose it to the ROC. And this was a voluntary disclosure. It was a voluntary disclosure of the information where there was without the consent of client, where there was no requirement of the law. Hence, in this case, D&D and associate will be held guilty of professional misconduct. Now, if I change a few words in this particular question, okay, through the letter, instead of saying that, they reported the matter to ROC through the letter, instead of that, if I write over here through ADT 4, or they report the matter in ADT 4, okay, reported the matter in ADT 4. In that particular case, it becomes a duty of the auditor and required by law. Because why? You are following the procedure of the law. You are reporting some matters in the ADT 4. Over there, it will be responsibility of the auditor to demonstrate that in this particular scenario, auditor, was having sufficient reasons to believe that the offense of a fraud, which involves an amount of more than 1 crore of rupees, has been conducted. Okay, so there will be two things. One, offense of a fraud, like reason to believe, plus 1 crore. If these are the conditions, then you can say it's a duty of the auditor, ADT 4, filed, and accordingly it is being reported to the ROC or MCA. It's a duty of auditor required by law. You can say that section 143.12 requires auditor to report this matter, and accordingly the reporting has been done. So it will be valid. But when you do through a letter, not the ADT4. It's a disclosure problem. You are not appropriately, disclosing the matter. It's kind of breach of confidentiality, and accordingly, you are not required to disclose the matter, and you will be held guilty of professional misconduct. Clear? Any doubt till now? Any doubt? No? Okay. If no doubt, let's proceed to the next question. And I would say this is a very good question here, because through this question now we will understand a very common, very important set of particular clauses that I want to discuss. The cashier of the company committed fraud and absconded with the proceeds thereof. Okay. The chief accountant of the company also did not know when the fraud had occurred. During the audit, auditor failed to discover the fraud. However, the fraud was discovered by the chief accountant after the audit was completed. Investigation made at the time indicated that the auditor does not exercise proper skill and care and performed his work in a desultory and haphazard manner. With this background, the directors of the company intended to file disciplinary proceedings against the auditor. Comment with reference to the CA Act 1949 and schedules thereto. Basically, auditor performed the audit. However, he missed to identify the fraud. In that sense, someone else identified that fraud, and now they want to report about the auditor's inappropriate work, or you can say the work where the auditor did not exercise proper skill and care, and accordingly they have filed disciplinary. They want to initiate disciplinary proceedings against the auditor. You need to comment in this regard. So what do you think? Is auditor liable in this scenario? Yes, no, and if yes, then under which clause? Quickly, take a minute, read the question, and tell me whether the auditor is liable or not in this particular scenario. And I need the answer with which clause. If he is liable, then as per which clause? Quickly. So understand one thing over here. See, in this particular scenario, okay, you need to understand what auditor was supposed to do and what he has performed. What was auditor's responsibility and how he has performed. That is something you need to identify over here, and accordingly you need to answer from that perspective. And I will take up some set of clauses over here to explain you and to differentiate very important concept. Okay, like how the responsibility of the auditor is there, and some concepts around that. Anyone? No? Okay, let me discuss the concept that I wanted to discuss. Okay, now there are 5 clauses that I will take together for a summary purpose. Okay, we will summarize the 5 clauses very quickly. Now, these 5 clauses, like they start from clause 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So these are the 5 clauses of the part 1 of the second schedule, which are very important and which we need to understand. Quick. So clause 5. Clause 5 talks about, and I'll take you to the study material also. Clause 5 talks about if a CA in practice fails to disclose material fact known to him, which is not disclosed in the financial statement, but the disclosure of which is necessary in making such financial statement where he is concerned with the financial statement in a professional capacity. So we are talking about fail to disclose material fact known to him. Okay, and the fact was necessary for the purpose of financial statement. So clause 5, fail to disclose what? Material fact. and that fact was known to him. So he should be aware about the fact. Okay, that's clause 5. Now, clause 6. Anyone, what is clause 6? Part 1, second schedule. Anyone? Okay. So the clause 6 is where the auditor fails to report a material misstatement known to him to appear in the financial statement with which he is concerned in the professional capacity. And now, in this particular clause, we are talking about fails to report material misstatement which is known to him in the FS. Okay. So again, we are talking about something which is known to him. So fail to report now here. And again, what we are talking about, material misstatement. So if you see, we are talking about now material misstatement. And again, what we are talking about is known to him. If that is the case, then clause 6. Then clause 7, but I will take clause 8 first. What is clause 8? Fails to obtain sufficient information which is necessary for the opinion, or exceptions are sufficient to negate the, exceptions are so big that they are negating your expression of opinion. So I would say fail to obtain sufficient information necessary for opinion. Fail to obtain necessary information which is required for opinion. Okay. And clause 9. Clause 9 talks about that where auditor fails to invite attention, okay, fails to invite attention from the material departure from generally accepted audit procedures. Generally accepted audit procedures. Fail to invite. Okay, and about what? Then we are talking about now material departure. Okay, and material departure from audit procedures. If that is the case, then clause 9. Now in clause 5, 6, 5, 6, 8, 9, there is some failure which is being done. In our question, tell me one thing, which failure do you identify over here? Is there any failure that you identify from the side of auditor? First of all, failed to disclose known to him. Was auditor aware about this particular fraud? Answer is no. So clause 5 will not come. Okay, clause 5 will not come. Clause 6. Failed to report material misstatement known to him. Was he aware about the audit fraud during the audit? Answer is no. Clause 6 will also not come. Clause 8. Fail to obtain sufficient information for the, expressing the opinion. Now, here, what we can understand over here is that he performed the work, but in a haphazard manner. Okay. And dysentery manner. That means you are not getting any result out of it. Okay. You are not getting any result out of your work, or the work is performed in such a way that it lacks the clear plan or the purpose, or it's aimless, kind of half-hearted, or kind of that particular work that is being performed. Okay, so if that is the type of work, means some work is performed, but whether it is appropriate or not, that is something we need to understand. So one can question that, okay, clause 8 can be applicable because there is no sufficient information about the fraud. Like, he should have obtained the sufficient information about the particular cash balance, and then on the basis of that he would have identified that, okay, he can express the opinion. But we will see that in a while. Okay, clause 9. Meanwhile, we understand the clause 9. Clause 9 talks about attention from the material departure of generally accepted audit procedures. There is no departure from the audit procedure. All the procedures have been performed. So there was no requirement to fail to invite the attention. Again, clause 9 will also not applicable. See, now there is one more clause that we need to discuss. That is clause number 7. Okay. Clause number 7 is very important to understand. Clause number 7 talks about that if the auditor does not exercise due diligence or is grossly negligent in the conduct of his professional duties, means he is performing the duties, but he is not exercising due diligence. So performance is there, but it is not appropriate. That's a clause 7. Similar in our scenario. Okay. So the question that we were saying, performance is there. Performance is there, but that is not appropriate. That's why I will invoke clause 7 over here. Okay. I will invoke clause 7 and I will say that auditor has performed the work, but that is not appropriate. No due diligence has been exercised. As a result, he will be guilty of professional misconduct under clause 7. Now you will ask, sir, why it is not appropriate? How we can say that it is not appropriate? So, see, there is a standard you guys might have already read about, SA 240. What is SA 240? Anyone quickly? What is SA 240? What is the name of SA 240? SA 240, the auditor's responsibility relating to the fraud in the audit of a financial statement, where auditor has to understand, has to, perform the risk assessment. He has to be, alert. He has to understand the red flags. And based on that, he needs to perform the audit, plan and perform the audit. In this scenario, if auditor, like there is a cashier, okay, he committed a fraud and absconded with the proceeds thereof. No one knew about this particular fraud. But again, there are certain areas where are high risk areas where there is a fraud risk. When you perform the risk assessment as per SA 315, okay, you have to consider the fraud element in that, the fraud risk in those particular areas, and accordingly you need to perform the work. So over here, you have performed, the auditor has performed the work, but without considering the impact of SA 240 over the planning of that particular audit. That's why I'm saying he's a gross negligent. He did not exercise the due skill and care required to perform the work. That's where the clause 7 will come into the picture. That is, does not exercise due diligence or is grossly negligent. Does not exercise due diligence. Sorry. Or you can say it's a grossly negligent. In that particular case, clause 7 will come into the picture as in was in our question. Now let's see the answer. So according to the clause 7, part 1 of the second schedule of the CAA Act 1949, a chartered accountant in practice is deemed to be guilty of a professional misconduct. He does not exercise due diligence or grossly negligent in the conduct of his professional duties. Okay. In this particular scenario, what is happening is auditor failed to discover the fraud. Okay. He was supposed to apply the concept of SA 240. He was supposed to apply and he was supposed to understand the fraud risk when he was planning for the audit, but he failed to do that. Plus, his work was performed in haphazard manner. As a result, from that particular perspective, clause 7 will be applicable and he will be guilty of professional misconduct. So this is how you need to write the answer. You need to first provide the provision, then you need to give the analysis of the case, and then you need to conclude. Okay, so this is how you need to write the answer for this particular question. Any doubts? Okay, if no doubts, let's proceed to the next question. Now, I want you guys to answer the question, answer this particular question. It's pretty kind of, easy. And we have discussed yesterday also this particular topic. Like it's something which we have already discussed. Mr. Chetan, a practicing chartered accountant, was involved in a family dispute over an ancestral property. To gain an undue advantage, he allegedly forged the will of his late uncle, presenting it as a genuine document for the legal proceedings. The forgery was later uncovered and the legal action was initiated against him. Although the act was committed in his personal capacity and not in the course of his professional duties, a complaint was filed with the disciplinary committee of the ICAI. Analyzed whether Mr. Chetan would be held liable for the misconduct as per the provisions of the CA Act. So read the question for a minute, okay, and then tell me, do you think Mr. Chetan would be liable in this scenario? What do you think? He committed certain acts in his personal capacity, not in the course of professional duties. A complaint was filed, but here he was not, performing any professional duty. He was not performing any, engagement or audit where this kind of forgery was conducted by him. It was personal duties in his personal capacity where this particular forgery was, undertaken by him. So would Mr. Chetan be liable for misconduct in this scenario? If yes, under which clause? Quickly. Anyone? No? Okay. Now, for this, see, we already discussed something similar in the previous session. Okay, it's on the similar lines. So we need to go back to the first schedule to understand this topic. So what is first schedule about? Like first schedule part 4. So we need to understand first schedule part 4, which is applicable to the chartered accountants in general. Okay, and it is on the other misconduct. Remember, it is other misconduct. Now over there is a clause 2 that we need to understand in this scenario. What is clause 2? Clause 2 talks about that if you bring disrepute to the profession or the institute as a result of your action, whether or not related to the professional work. So if there is a disrepute because of your action, whether or not related to your professional work, in that particular case, you can be held guilty of, other misconduct. Other misconduct, okay, not the professional misconduct, remember. And it is applicable to members in general. That means it is not necessary that you have to be in practice. Plus, it is not necessary that it has to be linked with the professional duties, because the wordings are whether or not related to the professional work, means it can be related to the personal work. So in personal capacity is also, covered in this particular clause. Now if you bring disrepute to the profession by even, performing some task in your personal capacity, this clause can be attracted. Now, some students may say that clause 1 can also be applicable where he is, doing some forgery and legal action has been taken. But see, when clause 1 will be applicable when he is guilty of any civil or criminal offense, okay, which is punishable with imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months. Now, in our question that we were discussing, okay, is there any information about the imprisonment? So what we have the information is that the forgery was uncovered later and legal action was initiated against him. But there is no information about the imprisonment, whether it is more than 6 months, whether it's less than 6 months, whether it is a criminal offense, not, but some legal action has been taken. So can I invoke clause 1? Answer is no. I cannot invoke clause 1. But over here, I can invoke clause 2. The reason because something has been done in his personal capacity, which is bringing disrepute to the profession. He has done forgery, okay, in his personal capacity. And as a result, there was a disrepute to the institute and to the profession that, CA, being a CA, he has done forgery. As a result, I will invoke clause 2. And he will be held guilty of never write professional misconduct, other misconduct. Sometimes students in flow, they write, okay, as per the clause 2, part 4 of the first schedule of the Chartered Accountants Act, Mr. Chetan would be held guilty of professional misconduct. Then, and you are wrong over there because it's an other misconduct. So you have to be, mindful of that particular small detail that it's a other misconduct, not a professional misconduct. Now, what is the answer? Let's see. So how you need to write the answer? As per the clause 2, part 4 of the first schedule to the CA Act, a member of the institute, in practice or not, deemed to be guilty of other misconduct if he brings disrepute to the profession or the institute, whether or not it is related to his professional work. Now, in the present case, you need to provide the analysis that we discussed just now, that he has done forgery and that has brought disrepute to the profession of a chartered accountant. As a result, guilty of other misconduct under clause 2, part 4 of the first schedule. This is your conclusion. So we, here the critical point is that which clause to apply, not clause 1 of the part 4, because we don't have the information of for more than less than 6 months. Second thing is that over here, we need to understand that we need to write other misconduct, not the professional misconduct. Any doubt till now? Any doubt? No? Okay. If no doubt, let's proceed to the next question that I want to discuss. Again, one very good question. And, just it's on the similar topic that we discussed from last to last question. That was a very good topic. So what is the question? The ICAI and Associates conducted stock audit of PQR Limited as per the instruction issued by the ASG Bank. However, instead of visiting the site where the stock was lying, the firm relied on the Management Information System report, along with the inspection reports and the photographs of the stock taken by the employees of PQR Limited. The photographs were also carrying the date and time printed on them. Comment with reference to the CA Act 1949 and schedules thereto. Now tell me, what is your opinion in this particular scenario? Do you think the DIGI and Associates are guilty of either professional misconduct or other misconduct, or they are not? Because they have photographs carrying the date and time printed. These photographs are of stock which is being maintained by the PQR Limited, and they were supposed to perform the basically stock audit. So take a minute, read the question and tell me your answer. So tell me, what do you think? Whether DIGI in associate is liable for the professional or other misconduct or not. Now, first of all, when there is a stock audit of PQR Limited, okay, again, what is the responsibility of the auditor? To answer this question, you need to understand what is the responsibility of the auditor. If you understand the responsibility, you will be able to answer the question. Okay. Now, in case of the stock audit, auditor has to personally visit the site and he has to perform the physical inspection of the stock. Okay. And the similar lies in the audit also. When you do an audit of a particular financial statement of a company, okay, over there, when there's an inventory, there's a specific set of standard that requires you to perform the physical inspection. Can anyone tell me the name of that standard? SA 501, audit evidence, specific considerations for the selected items. And in that, you have a one item which is existence and the condition of the inventory. Similarly, the auditor has to look for the existence and conditions of the inventory over here. Now, here auditor did not perform the audit. He did not physically visited the site. Rather, what he did is he actually relied on the photographs or the reports that were provided by the management. Now, the photographs are carrying date and time printed on them. Are they carrying the place location, the GPS coordinates that it is taken from the warehouse only? And date and time can also be, edited on the photographs. The photographs can be edited. And with the AI, it can be done anything now. So the question comes is it appropriate for the auditor to rely on the information provided by the management? It is as good as management representation. If you do not verify, if you rely on that, it's as good as management representation. In that case, you have performed the work, but the work is not of the appropriate manner. The work is not of the appropriate manner, and you are not exercised the skill and care that was required to be exercised. So, if I have to write, auditor failed to exercise skill and care he was required to exercise. Okay. So, he did not exercise the due diligence, the diligence that was required to perform the stock audit. And as a result, which clause will come into place? Quickly, which clause will be there on the basis of which you will be, saying that the DIGI and associate will be held guilty of professional misconduct? So it will be clause 7, part 1 of the second schedule to the CA Act. Now, some may ask, sir, why not clause 9? What is clause 9? Clause 9 is kind of where you fail to invite attention from the material departure. But if we read clause 9 once again, okay, it is something where you need to, invite the attention from the departure of generally accepted audit procedures applicable to the circumstances. So if there is an audit procedure applicable, and if you do not perform that applicable audit procedure, if there is a material departure, okay, and that is, if you do not apply that procedure and if you fail to invite in your report, in that case, you will be held guilty. Now, in the given question, do we have any information about the report, that whether it was reported in the audit report that he has relied upon the management or not? We don't have that information. So the information about audit report or stock audit report in this scenario, whether it is being mentioned in the audit report or not, we do not know. So there's a big question mark over there. As a result, we cannot comment on the clause 9. So the only part where we will comment is the clause 7. Based on the given information, you need to answer the question. Yes, I can apply clause 9 also if the information was given. That if I add one more line to this question, okay, that let's say this is the addition, that DIGI associates also issued clean report kind of, okay, or let's say unmodified opinion without disclosing the fact that they did not perform the physical verification. Okay, they issued unmodified opinion without disclosing this departure in their report. Okay, in that particular case, I will invoke clause 9 also, because there's a they failed to invite attention from a material departure from the generally accepted procedures of audit, which is applicable in the circumstances. So in this circumstance, the applicable procedure is that you need to perform the physical verification, but you did not perform. Okay, there is a departure. Have you invited your attention? Have you invited the attention of the readers in the report? If not, then clause 9 will also be applicable. But it is not given in the question, so for time being, I will invoke the clause 7. So let's see the answer. According to the clause 7, part 1 of the second schedule to the CA Act 1949, a charter accountant in practice is deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct if he does not exercise due diligence or is grossly negligent in the conduct of his professional duties. Okay. Now, in the current particular case, DIGA associate did not exercise due diligence, okay, in conduct of their professional duties, and they did not visit the site. Instead, they relied on the MIS report, and the reports and photographs were performed that were provided by the company. And to conduct the stock audit, you need to perform the existence and the physical condition of the stock, as we discussed, cross-telling the stock with the stock statement submitted by the bank borrower, correct classification of the stock valuations. There are multiple things you need to perform, which were not performed. As a result, DIGI and associate will be held guilty of professional misconduct under clause 7 part 1 of second schedule of the CA Act. So this is how you need to write your answer. You need to specify when you write the analysis, okay, you need to specify what was supposed to be done. If you say gross negligent, if you say that he did not exercise due diligence, then you need to specify where. On what area do you feel he did not exercise due diligence? You need to explain that, okay, this was supposed to be done. This is not what he did. And as a result, there is a gross negligence in the picture. You cannot directly just like, okay, because DIGA did not exercise due diligence and were grossly negligent in their conduct of professional duty, hence guilty of professional misconduct. No, you need to also specify what was required to be done. Why you are saying gross negligent? Most of students only write, okay, they were gross negligent, but why? What was missed? That is something you need to write in the answer. Otherwise, your answer will be incomplete. Okay, you are quoting the provision, you are directly jumping to the conclusion without the analysis. Analysis requires why and what was amiss. Clear? Any doubt with this particular question? Any doubt? Yes, no? Okay. If no doubt, Then again, I have a one very good question on the topic that we discussed yesterday, but again, very good question. So it will kind of serve as a revision of what we discussed in the last session. CA Dipali is a practicing chartered accountant having office in Surat. She is owner of creative.net. In order to generate additional revenue, CA Dipali sold this domain to GRIP Limited for earning royalty of 3,50,000. One of the directors of GRIP Limited contended that CA Dipali has violated the code of conduct. CA Dipali responded that there is no violation of code of conduct as the selling of domain name is not related to any professional assignment which requires approval of the institute. Comment on the action of CA Dipali with reference to the CA Act and schedules thereto. Something new. So there is a domain sale. Okay. She was the owner of creative.net, and in order to generate additional revenues, she sold this domain to a particular company and she earned a royalty. Now, something different is being happening in this question. Domain sale. Now, tell me, what do you think about this domain sale? Is it permissible? Will you count this as a management consultancy service under section 224 or not? Or you will say that it's something else. Remember, we discussed about the management consultancy services in the previous session, and over there we discussed why it is important, because anything if you do from the management consultancy service, it's deemed to be practice, and you do not then you are not required to go to the clause 11 to check whether it is permissible under the general permission or you need a specific approval. Okay, because that is part of the deemed to be in practice. In this particular scenario, what do you think? Is domain sale requires a separate specific approval from the council, or you will call this as a management consultancy service only, because she was owning a domain, she sold that domain, and now she's earning royalty. Quickly. Quickly. Okay. To understand this, let's go back to the regulation. Which was the regulation? Quickly. Under which we discussed this. Which was the regulation? Under clause 11? 190A. Yes, 190A. So we'll go to the regulation 190A, and there is one specific point that we need to understand. So we have this regulation 190A and appendix 9 of the CA regulations, which is covering by the 190A. Okay, now basically there are two sections, general resolution and specific resolution. Now we have gone through the general resolution part, or areas where the permission is granted generally, and over there you might have remember, or again, there is nothing with respect to the domain. There is nothing with respect to the domain. Now if there is nothing with respect to the domain, then is it covered under the specific resolution? Again, it is not also covered under the specific resolution. There is nothing specific about the domain. Now then, where to count this? Where you will include this? Anyone? You will not find anything over here with respect to the domain. But here is a concept that we need to understand. Under this particular general resolution, all these items which are there, okay, all these items which are there under the general resolution are defined. Okay, are defined. That means it's not something that, okay, sometimes we say that, okay, this is an example of list given, and anything similar we can include it, or if something is more, this is exhaustive, kind of fully comprehensive, considering all the elements of the general resolution. This is defined and exhaustive in nature. Okay, defined and exhaustive in nature. But when you go for a specific resolution, there is some one particular point, which is point number 9, which talks about any other business or occupation for which executive committee considered that the permission may be granted. That means all the residuary items which are not part of the management consultancy service, which are not part for the general resolution, will fall under 9. So if I have to depict through a chart, okay. So first of all, you need to understand, like if there is a service or there is an activity slash business, first of all, understand whether management consultancy service. So there could be two, outcomes of this: yes and no. The moment I say yes, yes, it's a deemed to be in practice. Okay, and no need for clause 11. Perfectly fine. Matter over. No need for clause 11. You have a permission. You can see in practice can provide the management consultancy service. There is no need for anything like it. Now, when I say no, at that point in time, I need to check two things: whether covered under general permission list, whether covered under the general permission list. If yes, okay. Now, if yes, in that particular case, fine, provide it, or you can perform. So if yes, then CA in practice can indulge into. So perfectly fine. But if no, in that case, I need to again go and see that, okay, a specific list, a specific approval list, if the answer to this particular part is yes, then take permission and then indulge. Okay, so take approval or prior approval, I would say. If no, now here it is the part. If no, or it is not covered under the, whether if it is no, and kind of, if it is not covered anywhere, not even any of the list, okay, it is not covered under any of the list or any specific area. In that particular case, what you need to do is, it will come down to over here. It will fall under the residuary area. There is a 9 clause that we discussed. This item number 9: any other business or occupation for which the executive committee considered that the permission may be granted. So you need to check whether this permission can be granted under this item number 9. So the activity will fall under that serial number 9, and accordingly you need to take the prior approval. And again, if it is falls under activity 9, then take prior approval and then engage. It's a cycle. Okay, similar in this particular question, as we discussed, sorry, over here, and we discussed, it is neither the management consultancy service. No, it's not a management consultancy service. It's not a general part. It's not something where the permission is generally allowed. So permission generally allowed, no, it will fall under the serial number 9. of prior approval. As a result, CA Dipali was supposed to take prior approval in this particular scenario. Okay. This is other business or occupation. This is not something which you can say that, it's a part of the profession, like part of the practice. No, it's in other business and profession. So she was supposed to, like, selling and purchasing of domain. Okay. Selling and purchasing of domain is other business. As a result, requires approval, and she has not obtained the approval. She will be held guilty of professional misconduct under clause 11 and regulation 190A. You can say appendix 9C, appendix 9 of the CA regulations. Let's see the answer. Again, as per the clause 11, part 1 of the first schedule to the CA Act, a member is deemed to be guilty if he engages in any business or occupation other than the profession of a CA, unless permitted by counsel so engaged. So provided nothing that shall disentitle of being a director and whole time, like we have seen already about the director, whether he can be whole time or part managing director, all those things. Now again, regulation 190A, okay, that provides that unless and until you have a permission granted, you cannot engage in any other business or profession. You need to provide the analysis of the case, and you need to say that this is other business and occupation. In analysis, you need to specify what is amiss, where it's the problem, and accordingly she will be guilty of professional misconduct under clause 11 part 1 of the schedule 1, first schedule to the Charter Accountants Act, for selling the domain name for a royalty. Clear? Any doubt with respect to this question? Because this was a particular new area, a residuary, area which is not directly given, but there is just something you need to interpret. You need to understand how the list works. The first part, general permission, where all the the list is exhaustive. That means you cannot assume that there is something more in the general permission unless and until it is specified. There is nothing more. There are 14 points, and in the new code, there will be more. There are more points. Accordingly, those are the only points which are applicable in the general permission. You cannot add further points by your own under general permission saying that, okay, it's similar to this. No. Unless and until it is not matching any of this, you cannot assume it's general permission. It will be going to the specific area. Clear? Any doubt? Yes, no? Now, again, one very good question I would like to take, which we discussed, something we discussed, like this clause we discussed yesterday, but not in detail. So I would like to take a question on this. So the question is, Mr. Rohan, a practicing chartered accountant, okay, in Rohan Arjun and Associate, is an associate member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, but he started using his designation FCA on his visiting card and professional correspondence to create a better professional image. During scrutiny of certain records, the ICAI sought clarification from Mr. Rohan regarding the activities that appeared unrelated to the professional practice. Despite multiple letters and reminders from the institute, he failed to respond or provide the requested information. Mr. Arjun, another partner of the firm, whose name had been removed from the register of members of the institute, continue to train an article assistant, and also failed to respond to the institute letter seeking clarification. Comment with reference to the CA Act and schedules thereto. A very interesting case, very interesting question, because few things are happening, few different things are happening in this particular question. Okay, there are different things that we need to understand what is happening, and accordingly we need to answer. So tell me, what do you think? Which clause will be applicable? Whether they will be held guilty of professional misconduct, other misconduct. So you need to understand what is going on, what are the scenario, what is the scenario, and what is gone wrong in this particular scenario. Anyone? No? Anyone? Umang, I'll come to your question in a while about the previous question, but let me take. So your question on the previous one that we discussed about the domain sale was that it is an asset sale, not a business. See, understand. If it was an asset sale, I would have recovered the amount as an sale consideration, not the royalty. So the amount that is recovered as a royalty, that denotes it's a business. Otherwise, you will say that, okay, sale consideration. If this is a one asset, it would have been sale consideration for the sale of asset. But the term which is used is a royalty. That is denoting a business. That's why I said business of selling domain rather than selling a domain as an asset. Okay, about this question, what do you think about this question, the current one, where they have not replied and they are using the designation of the FCA? What do you think on this? Anyone? Okay, so let me take you to the particular clause that we discussed in the previous session also. Very important. Now, part 3 of the first schedule, we discussed something, clause 2, where you do not provide information to the institute. Clause 1, not being a fellow, act as a fellow. Here, act does not only mean you physically act. Act means you represent yourself through the conduct of your activities. Okay. So through your activities, if you represent yourself as a fellow, that means you are acting as a fellow. Now, one is not being a fellow, act as a fellow. Second is that you do not comply with the requirements and you do not provide the information which is required for. Now, coming to the question that we discussed. Here, Mr. Rohan was an associate. He was an associate member, but he used the designation of FCA. One, I will attract the clause 1 over here. Pretty straightforward, nothing difficult. Clean. Second, during the scrutiny of certain records, ICAI sought clarification from Mr. Rohan regarding activities that appeared unrelated to the professional practice. Despite multiple letters and reminder, he failed to respond or failed to provide the requested information. Now, after reading this, some student may say, sir, why not clause 11? Because there are some activities that appeared unrelated to the profession. Shouldn't we invoke clause 11 in this particular scenario? Activities that are appearing, which are not relevant to his profession. But understand one thing, here the information is sought. Clarifications are sought. There is no conclusive evidence that he was performing those activities or he is being indulged in any other profession which is not related to the professional practice. So clarification is sought, but there is no conclusive thing. That's why, as it is not conclusive, I will not invoke clause 11. So clause 11 will not be applicable unless and until I find him that he has done something which was not related to professional practice, and where he has not taken prior approval or was not falling part of the general list. Till the time, I cannot invoke clause 11. Now, he failed to respond and provide the requested information. As a result, again, I will invoke over here clause 2 of part 3 of the first schedule. Fine, simple. Part 3 of first schedule. Fine. Now, next paragraph. Mr. Arjun, another partner of the firm, whose name has been removed from the register of members, continued to train an article assistant and also failed to respond to the institute's letter seeking clarification. Now, this is very important. Continued to train article assistant and he also failed to respond. Now, what you will apply in this scenario? Anyone? Which particular provision you will apply over here? Quickly. Which particular provision you will apply over here? Anyone? No? See, again, first of all, we don't have a specific information that, you know, like for what period he continued to train, or, when his name was removed. Some may ask that this is a violation of the, regulations, chartered accountants regulations, or council general guidelines. There is a violation which is appearing. But do you have a specific information about this violation? That's very important to understand. Okay. If you don't have a specific information about the violation, you cannot say that it's a violation. You need to have a specific information. Then I can invoke, if there is a violation of any regulation, council general guidelines, or anything, then there's a specific clause for that, which I can invoke. But till the time you don't have those details available, you cannot specifically, provide, or you cannot specifically write about that particular area. So some might write, I'll show you one particular clause that I'm talking about. See this one. Clause 1 of part 2 of the second schedule, which is again applicable to general members in general. So if he contravenes any of the provision of the act, regulations made thereunder, or any guidelines issued by the council. Now again, training of the assistant, regulations which are there under. Okay, so we need to understand further whether he was supposed to, or you can say, train when he is not a member. So when his name was removed, what was the duration, and why that happened? Like a lot of things you need to understand from that perspective, and then only you can say that, okay, you know this is something done which is not appropriate. So if without that information, if I say that, there has been fault, or there has been something which has been missed, then it is not appropriate, because I need to have, appropriate information about that particular scenario. But if you have appropriate information about the scenario, that where he was not supposed to train article assistant and he was still training, you have definite answer for that, which is a violation of the regulation. In that case, in that particular case, you will be, you can apply this clause 1. There is a contravention of the regulations or the guidelines issued by the council, and there is a violation, and accordingly you can apply clause 1 part 2 of the second schedule. Clear? Why as of now I will not apply this? So that is the reason I'm as of now not invoking this particular clause. But again, yes, you can invoke if there is a appropriate information provided in the question. But again, here the only part I can see is also failed to respond to the institute letter seeking clarification. So I will again invoke clause 2, which we have discussed. And if you see the answer, again, clause 2 requires this particular thing, designation part. Okay, and as a result, clause 1 and clause 2 of first schedule of the chartered accountants act, and Arjun again clause 2 part 3 of the first schedule of CA act, because he failed to respond. And Mr. Rohan, again, he was acting as a fellow but he was not a fellow, and he also failed to respond. Clear? Any doubt? Yes, no? No, Bang. Basically, see, even if he's not a member, his name has been removed. Okay, but that doesn't mean like in this particular scenario, his name has been removed. You are saying, okay, his name, Mr. Arjun, has been removed, whose name has been removed from the register of member. But again, he was supposed to reply, because his name is removed temporarily, which can be reinstated, or accordingly, we need to see for what time his name has been removed, whether it is permanently removed, whether it is 3 months, or some period is there. So till that time we don't have information, we will continue to understand that okay, Mr. Arjun is there, he's a member, and he was supposed to reply, and the provisions of the act will be applicable to him. Any doubt? No? Okay. If no doubt, let me take one more question. Again, a good question. So, this particular question here, we will basically understand that the topic, the combination of the clauses that we, saw just before from the second schedule. And accordingly, we will be, able to understand the concept with much more clarity. Mr. Aditya, a chartered accountant, was auditor of Draw Limited during the financial year 23-24. The investment appeared in the balance sheet of the company of 23 lakhs and was the same amount as in the last year. Later on, it was found that the company's investment were only 76,000, but the value of the investment was inflated for the purpose of obtaining higher amount of bank loan. Comment with reference to the provision of the CA Act and schedules there. Similar concept that we saw something, 2-3 questions before. Something was required to be done, and there is a miss. And there is a miss over here. So you need to answer as per the CA Act or the clauses that we have discussed, which provisions you will apply in this particular scenario. Anyone? Anyone? Okay. Now, understand one thing. Basically, he was the auditor of the Draw Limited. During FY 23-24, investment appeared this amount. It was also the same last year. Later on, it was found this is lower. Okay. And this was inflated for the purpose of opening bank loan. I will discuss one particular clause. Yes, Umang, you are right. But there is something we need to also discuss before we proceed to that particular clause. Sorry. Yeah. Now, clause 2, very important. Clause 2 says that if a CA in practice certifies or submits in his name or the name of his firm a report on the examination of the financial statement, unless the examination of such statement, okay, and the records have been made by him, by a partner, employee in his firm, or by another charter accountant in practice. Understand? So what it's being said that unless and until you are not verified, if you do or if you sign or issue a report in your name, you will be held guilty of professional misconduct. So who are allowed, like who can verify things on your behalf? Partner, employee, by another CA in practice. Again, when I say partner, partner will be, partner means, if I talk about a CA partner, is it a member or a CA in practice? Can I say a member but not in practice verified the things? Can I include that? No, we discussed that yesterday. Partner for a CA means CA in practice. As of now, I'm not talking about multidisciplinary partnership firm. I'm normally talking about a partnership CA, statutory audit CA partnership firm, wherein when I talk about a partner, it's a CA in practice. You cannot enter into a partnership with a member only. Employee, again, employee here, I'm not writing employee who is a CA in practice. So employee can be anyone. Understand that. So for the purpose of employee, there is no additional requirement. That means he can be CA, can be non-CA. Okay. Can be member or non-member. Simple. And by another chartered accountant in practice, by joint audit, or you can say relying the work performed by another auditor. Both of the scenarios can be there. Now, if there is something which is done by you, partner, employee, another CA in practice, fine. Otherwise, guilty of professional misconduct. Let's go to our question. Here, the chartered accountant did not verify the investment. See, again, investment was of 76,000, but the value of the investment was inflated for the purpose of higher bank loan. That means no one verified the investment at all. So what is happening over is, first of all, you signed on balance sheet or on an audit report without verifying. It's a simple process that you need to validate the value of the investment. You need to obtain the corresponding documents. That's a normal basic audit procedure that you need to perform. But without which you signed a report, but you did not verify it. Secondly, I can say that you were grossly negligent. You were grossly negligent. Now, is there any other clause that I can attract over here? I can apply over here. Is there any other clause? Yes, no. Why not clause 8? I failed to obtain necessary information which was required for my opinion. That means I did not perform the basic step. I have failed to obtain the information about the investment. Failed to obtain the information. Not even, I signed without verifying, but that is also, I failed to obtain the information. So plus failed to obtain information required for opinion. As a result, these are the clauses that will be applicable. Clause 2, Clause 8, Clause 7 of Part 1 of second schedule. Clear? And if you see the answer, these are the things like you need to provide that as per the part 1 of second schedule, you clause 2, clause 7, clause 8, you need to explain the provision. Then you need to analyze the scenario, what was done, you need to provide the analysis. He should not blindly rely, as I said, always provide what went wrong in your analysis. Otherwise, analysis is incomplete. And then on the basis of that, you need to provide your conclusion. Clear? Any doubt on this question? Any doubt? No? Okay, if no doubts, let's take a quick 10-minute break, and after the break, we'll gather back and continue the session. Thank you. discussion. Now we will be taking up some more questions and we will be discussing a few more topics on the similar lines. Okay. Again, on the similar concept that we just now saw, there is one more good question that we should I need to discuss. So, Pitch Private Limited requested CA Angad, a practicing charter accountant, to digitally sign the form related to the resignation of Mr. Ravi, one of the director of Pitch Private Limited, along with the copy of the resignation letter to be uploaded on the website of the registrar of the companies. The signature of Mr. Ravi was simply copied and pasted from another director of Pitch Private Limited. CA Angad, without verifying the genuineness of the resignation letter, digitally signed the form and the said form was uploaded on the website of the registrar of companies, comment with reference to the provision of the CA Act 1949. Now, why I chose this question? Reason because we are not talking about any audit. We are not talking about any particular, financial number in this. But there is something which is being done, and accordingly, we need to understand what has went wrong. So here, CA Angad has signed a particular director resignation form which was uploaded to the registrar, okay, of companies, but without verifying the genuineness of the resignation letter. Now, based on that, what do you think, which clause will be applicable? Anyone? See, the key concept where we need to understand is we should be clear about the details of the clause. We should be aware about which clause can be applied, what are the key details of the clause, and whether that fits into the scenario or not. Anyone? No? Okay, let's see few clauses. So the summary we prepared. So clause 5 was failed to disclose material fact known to him with respect to the financial statement. So can you say that he has failed to disclose the material fact with respect to the financial statement? Answer is no. There is no financial statement in the picture. I cannot invoke clause 5. Clause 6, failed to report material misstatement. Now, second question, is this a material misstatement? Yes, no? Is this a material misstatement? Answer is no, this is not a material misstatement. There was a copy paste kind of a forgery which was done, and he did not verify that you cannot say this is a material misstatement. Okay, as a result, clause 6 will also not be applicable. Clause 8, fail to obtain necessary information required for the opinion. Now let's go and read the clause appropriately. Okay, let's read the clause appropriately. Fails to obtain sufficient information which is necessary for expression of opinion, or its exceptions are sufficiently material to negate the expression of opinion. Now we are talking about expression of opinion. If there is any opinion which is being issued, and if he failed to obtain sufficient information necessary for expression of opinion. In our given question, is there any opinion issued? Yes, no? Is there any opinion over here? So what he has done, he has digitally signed, okay, the form related to the resignation. Where is the opinion? There is no opinion involved in this. And there is no information even about the opinion. As a result, I cannot say I can invoke clause 8. Clause 9, fail to invite material departure from the generally accepted audited procedures which are applicable in the circumstances. Now, again, the question comes is there any departure from the audit procedures? So if you read the clause 9, it says that fail to invite material departure from the generally accepted procedures of audit applicable in the circumstances. Now, again, we are not having any information in this scenario whether there was a failure to invite. Do you know there was a failure to invite? Is there a failure to invite from an audit procedure? Is there any audit involved in this? If there is no audit, how can you say that there is a failure to invite from the material departure of the audit procedure? Again, I will not apply clause 9. Then some might say, sir, clause 2, certify or submit a report unless you have verified. Okay, if you are certifying or submitting a report in your name without verifying the particulars, or either they are not verified by a partner or by employee. Okay, but what report we are talking about over here? Understand one thing. A report of an examination of the financial statements, unless such examination of such statements and the related records have been made by a partner or an employee. So we are talking about a report on the examination of the financial statement. That's the clause 2. That's a small detail you need to understand. As a result, again, is there any financial report on the financial statement involved? Examination of the financial statement involved? Answer is no. Can I apply clause 2? No. Can I apply clause 7? Clause 7, grossly negligent. Is it related to audit? That he has to be grossly negligent only in case of the audit? Or it is the grossly negligent in all the cases? So if you read the clause, it says that grossly negligent, but where? During the conduct of his professional duties. It is not audit. It is not examination of financial statement. It is not restricted to a particular assignment or a type of assignment. It is for all professional engagements. It is for all professional engagements. Okay, or professional duties. Wherever there is a professional duty, all professional engagement and the duties are covered in this. That includes signing the resignation form that is required to be uploaded to the MCA. So I will not restrict the application of the clause 7. So clause 7 is not restrictive in nature. Based on engagement. Okay, so it's not restrictive based on engagement in nature, unlike the other clauses that we have discussed. So in this particular case, no other clause will apply, and I will apply clause 7, part 1 of first schedule. Sorry, second schedule. Okay, so clause 7, part 1 of the second schedule will be applicable in this particular scenario. Clear? Any doubt? And let us see the answer. Again, as per the clause 7, part 1 of the second schedule, you need to specify the particular provision that if he does not exercise due diligence or is grossly negligent in his professional duties, very important. In the given case, what was the scenario? The director, you need to provide the analysis and you need to provide what went wrong in the analysis. Okay. So CA Angat, without verifying the genuineness, signed the form, and said form was uploaded on the website of the registrar of the companies. This is something wrong that he has performed. And due to forged signature, he should have taken care, but he has not taken, he has not performed the due diligence. As a result, he is professionally, he's liable for professional misconduct in this scenario as per clause 7 of part 1 of the second schedule to the Charter Accountants Act 1949. Any doubt on this particular question? See, that's where we need to understand that how we need to apply a particular clause. You may ask that, okay, sir, clause 7 is why is only that is applicable? Why we cannot quote clause 8? Why we cannot quote clause 2 or some other clause? You need to read and analyze the question, what is given, and based on that, you need to frame your answer. It is not something, the how many clauses you can apply. No, in the answer, you need to understand what are the appropriate provisions of the law which will be applicable rather than the how many provisions of the law I can apply. Okay, some students may write all the clauses like 2, 3, 4, 7. Don't do that. Understand which particular provision will be applicable, and then accordingly you write your answer in the given format. Clear? Any doubt? Okay. If no doubt, then let's take one more question. Again, a good question, and basically something new that we will be, taking care of for the first time. Messrs. R and Company, a firm of chartered accountants, received 2 lakh as advance against professional service from a charitable institute. Additionally, the institute entrusted with 10 lakhs to the firm for the specific purpose of investment in designate securities. The auditors deposited in their savings bank account and no investment was made in next 3 months. Comment based on the CA Act. Pretty straightforward. You can see what the firm has done with respect to the money. Now tell me which provisions you will apply. Pretty easy. Pretty easy. Which provisions you will apply for this particular scenario? So what is happening in this particular scenario? First, understand that there is some money which is being received by the CA firm. Okay, so CA firm has received some money. This is against the professional service from a charitable institute, and this is the advance. Plus, they have provided 10 lakh rupees for the investment in the designated securities, which is lying in the savings bank. So there are 2 type of funds which have been received, and they are lying into a savings bank account. What do you think? Very good, Umang. Absolutely correct. So let us go and read a particular clause that is applicable in this scenario. We will be going to clause number 10 of part 1 of the second schedule. So clause 10 talks about that when a chartered accountant in practice fails to keep the money of his client other than the fees or remuneration, that means these are the exceptions, other than fees or remuneration, that is fine. Okay, so if you fail to keep the money of his client, okay, or if you fail to use the money for the purpose for which it was received. So first of all, you fail to keep the money of the client in a separate bank account. There are exceptions, okay, but if you fail to keep the money in a separate bank account, then you will be held guilty of professional misconduct. Or if you fail to use such money for the purpose for they are intended within the reasonable time frame. Okay, now here we need to understand what is a reasonable time frame. What is reasonable? Okay, So first of all, we will summarize this particular clause so that you can understand. Money received, sorry, okay, money received. Now you need to understand few things. Is it a fee or remuneration? If yes, fine, nothing, no problem, not at all a issue. Is it money to be expended? Money meant for expenditure? Okay, if no, then we will see. But if it yes, then keep in separate bank account. Or basically, we will see if the money is there for a specific expenditure, then what to do. But let's say if the money is not for specific expenditure, then when I say no to this, okay, I need to check step by step. Then whether money is for specific use, specific purpose. Specific purpose can be investment, can be holding the money in the trust, or can be some any purpose. Then the last, that's an option. Is it for specific purpose? Definitely yes. If that is a yes, then you need to keep in separate bank account. And if it is money to be money meant for expenditure, you need to use that money. If yes, use within reasonable time frame. Use that money within the reasonable time frame. Now the question comes is, what is the reasonable time frame that we are understanding over here? So when I talk about the reasonable time frame, which is basically in this scenario, okay, uh, it's depending upon like what was the purpose for the money, like for what purpose money was provided to the charter accountant. What was the need, or you can say, what was the background of that particular, intention of providing that money, investment or something else, whatever it is. So accordingly, we need to define the reasonable time frame. Okay. And let's say, for example, the money was for the purpose of paying GST duties or the GST levy. In that case, whatever the due date will be, that will be the reasonable time frame. Okay. If the money is for purchasing a something which is, there is a due date which is required to be purchased, and that is required to be uh, you know expended immediately, then the due date or the time period for the expenditure is that particular time period. Okay. So accordingly, we need to understand what was the purpose for which the money was provided, and accordingly the reasonable time frame will differ. Now till that time, if you are not using that money, okay, let's say it is not to be expended within a short time frame, it is required to be used for a very long time frame. Let's say, for example, money is given to you, pay GST for the entire year. Whenever it comes, it becomes a due. So this reasonable time frame at that point in time, okay, you cannot say I have the money has been given for 1 year, I'll pay GST for 1 year and I'll keep the money in my bank account. No. If that reasonable time frame is a big time frame, okay, if reasonable time frame is not short, then deposit that money in a separate bank account. Remember that. So if it is not a short time frame for which the money has been provided to you, you need to keep that money in a separate bank account. Remember that. Okay. So clause 10 says that if you fail to keep the money in a separate bank account, which is required, which is given for a specific purpose, which is a long duration, or if you do not spend that money for the purpose for which they were supposed to be given or they were given to you, in that case, you will be held guilty of professional misconduct. In our given scenario, okay, what is the scenario is 2 lakhs given as an advance against the professional services. This is advance given for the professional service. So this is fees. Plus, there is a 10 lakh rupee which is required to be invested in the designated securities. Now, for the designated securities, there is no time frame given in the question itself. Okay, the time frame is not provided in the question. However, when an investment is required to be done, you will assume that investment will be done in a few days. Otherwise, the investment cost or things can change. Okay, if the investment is into the equity, the securities are equity, within 3 months there can be a very big movement in the price. So, and the investment, no investment was made for the next 3 months. So 3 months is a very long duration, and I will say it's more than reasonable time frame. Okay, in the given scenario, based on the given question, it's more than the reasonable time frame, and it was deposited in the savings bank account. Now, fee, perfectly fine. Money, specific purpose. Now, this is given for money to be expended, okay, money to be used. But if you do not use, keep in a separate bank account. If it is for the long term, keep in a separate bank account. First of all, you are not invested. Secondly, you are not kept in a separate bank account. So as a result, guilty of professional misconduct under clause, 10. Simple. Guilty of professional misconduct under clause 10, part 1 of the second schedule. Let's see the answer. Again, clause 10, part 1 of the second schedule, fails to keep the money. Okay. So and then you need to specify that he should receive such funds, and it would be duty to deposit them in a separate banking account. Utilize such funds only in accordance with the instructions of the client. Okay. Again, advance received by the chartered accountant does not fall under this. So we already saw that. That's a fees. So we did not raise an issue on that, but we raised on the issue that amount that was given for the purpose of designated securities is the 10 lakh rupees. And they have committed a professional misconduct by not depositing or by not utilizing the given money for the specific purpose. As a result, Messrs. R and company will be held guilty of professional misconduct. Okay, a very good concept that you need to understand is that either deposit in a separate bank account, or if it is required to be used within the time frame, like for the purpose, then use it. Now there is a one doubt on this particular area. Okay, doubt is that or a question that I get multiple times is that amount of rupees 10 lakhs received for GST payment of, let's say, okay, April to June quarter. Okay, now auditor did not pay GST, okay, till 31st March next year. Okay, 31st March. Let's say April to June quarter of 25, or this will be 26 or 27. So nothing was paid till 31st March 26, but money was kept in separate bank account. But money was kept in a separate bank account. Now tell me, will you apply clause 10 or not? Understand, money was given that you pay for the April to June quarter GST. And in this particular case, what happened? They did not pay, but they kept the money in a separate bank account. So, what would you say? Would you say the clause 10 will be applicable or not? Because the money is kept in separate bank account. Anyone? See the wordings of the clause that if you fail to use the money for purpose for which they are intended within the reasonable time. So one part of the clause, okay, talks about this is a failure, okay, but one part of the clause talks about that there is a failure to keep the money of the client in the separate bank account. The second part of the clause talks about fails to use such money. So either fails to keep the money in separate bank account or fails to use such money for the purpose for which they are intended within the reasonable time frame. So there are two limbs of this particular clause. So first of all, if you are during that particular time frame till which you need to use, if that is a not short time frame, let's say few days, then you need to deposit in a separate bank account, because that will fall under this particular part, that money meant to be expended, okay, because it is there with you for a very long period, so keep in a separate bank account. But if that money is required to be used within a reasonable time frame, which is a short, or which is a given time frame which is not a very long period, then you need to use such money, and fails to use such money for the purpose for which they are intended will attract clause 10. So in the given, the area we were discussing, if you do not pay, clause 10 will be applicable, because you cannot say that, you cannot take a defense of that I have kept the money in a separate bank account, where a separate provision of the same clause requires you to spend the money for the purpose for which it was received within the reasonable time frame. And for the given scenario, this will be the due date of this quarter will be the given reasonable time frame, reasonable time. Okay, so that is how you need to apply the concept of the reasonable time and the clause 10. Any doubt? Any doubt till now? No? Let us take one more question. Again, we will take a one very interesting question, and a topic which is, kind of most of the students sometimes get confused with. Mr. Arpit, a newly qualified charter accountant, started his practice and sought clients through telephone calls from his family and friends. Almost all of them employed in one or other retail trade business. One of his friends, Mr. Raja, gave him an idea to start online services and give stock certifications to the trader with cash credit limits in the bank. Mr. Arpit started a website with colorful, eye-catchy designs and shared the website address on his social media posts and stories. He also tagged 30 traders of his local community with a caption, "Easy online stock certification services." Discuss if the actions of Mr. Arpit are valid in the light of the professional ethics and the various pronouncements and the guidelines issued by the ICAI. Again, a question where we are not discussing about the audit. We are not discussing about, any item like misstatement which was not identified, failure to obtain the evidence, but a topic which is required to be understood also, that there is a website which has been started. Okay, he's a newly qualified chartered accountant. running a website for providing the services. That's the easy online stock certification services. So in this particular scenario, what will happen? Which provisions will you apply? Something we have already discussed just in the previous session on this topic. Anyone? Anyone? Okay, let me tell you. Remember, yesterday we discussed about clause 6 and 7 from the first schedule. Okay, part 1 first schedule. I actually provided a difference that how can you identify what is happening. Remember, I like just for a easy remember purpose, I said if someone goes and says that make me your statutory auditor, it's a clause 6. Okay, you are soliciting the clients. But on the other hand, if someone says and someone goes and says to the people that I am the best CA in the town, that is a clause 7, that you are trying to demonstrate your professional attainments. So clause 6, if you solicit clients or professional work, that is make me your statutory auditor, either directly or indirectly by circular, personal communication, interview, or by any other means, you will be held guilty of professional misconduct. In the given question, what is happening? Sorry. In the given question, what is happening? That Mr. Arpit, okay, he started the new practice and he tried to sort clients through telephone calls from his family and friends. He is trying to solicit the work, professional work, okay, which is not permissible. Basically, you're trying to solicit the work by through telephone calls, which is directly or indirectly. And if you read the clause, it says directly or indirectly by circular, by personal communication. This personal communication will include calls also. And indirectly means through relatives. Yes or no? Through relatives, families, and friends, and personal communication will include calls, messages, emails. So if there is a personal communication through which the family and the friends are reaching out to different people, and as a result, basically uh, the the chartered accountant who is just started the practice, basically he's trying to solicit the work. In that case, he will be he will be violating the provisions of clause 6. Let me go back. Yeah, so he will be violating the provisions of the clause 6. So as of now, we have identified, okay, the clause 6 will be applicable over here. Perfectly fine. What else is given in the question? That one of his friend, Mr. Raja, gave him the idea to start the website. He started the website with catchy colors and easy online stock certification services. He shared the links. Again, sharing the link of the website, okay, or on social media post, whether is it allowed? Can you share the website address on the social media post and stories? Can you share the website address on the social media post or stories? Yes or no? See, when you share the website address on the social media post or stories, it is kind of advertisement. Remember that. You are trying to advertise in order to solicit the work, which is not permissible. So you cannot do those things. You cannot circulate. And secondly, with respect to the catchy color eye the website with catchy eye colors, like catchy colors which are there, eye catchy designs, and all those things. Now, is it permissible for a chartered accountant to design a website in such a way? So what is the where this particular design or website is covered? Can anyone tell me how you can design a website? What are the things you need to take care when you are designing a website? You are creating a website. Anyone? Yes. Okay. So for this, there is something I want to discuss. Basically, there are guidelines under clause 6 only. Very good, Umang. There are guidelines which are given that how you can design a website, how the website should work. So there is a website guidelines which are provided, wherein you need to, wherein you need to, design your website in a way which is complied with those guidelines of the website. And accordingly, there are a lot of things that you need to comply when those, colors are there, when the fonts are there, or the things that you are, specifying on the website, like how your website is working or how your website is looking. And if you see on the page number 19.131 of your study material, you have been, that guidelines have been given, website of a CA firm. Okay, and these are the guidelines that are required to be followed, that the website should be on the pull mode, not on the push mode. Okay, then what you can mention on the website, what is allowed to be displayed on the website, what is not allowed to be displayed on the website. Okay, and secondly, what you can do with the website. Okay, you should not issue any circular or any other advertisement or any other material, okay, which, through which you are soliciting the people to visit the website. For example, social media post. I am putting my website on a social media post, that is, I'm, issuing some advertisement trying to solicit the people to visit my website. I can mention the website on the professional stationery, like letterhead, visiting cards, profile, but I cannot, do a advertisement of my website. Okay. Plus, again, a website should work on pull mode. That means whenever a prospective clients need the detail, he should get. It should not work on the push mode. That is, you are sending the notifications and, messages, emails to everyone that visit the website. There is a new thing on the website or something like that. So there is a list given what you can do, what you cannot do with respect to the website. As a result, if you will not comply with these guidelines, okay, in that particular sense, you are not complying with the clause 6, because they are also part of that, and accordingly you will be held guilty of professional misconduct. So in our given scenario, Mr. Arpit's website, okay, like he's shared on the social media post, plus the colors and everything, they are not in line with the website guidelines. As a result, he will be guilty of professional misconduct under. Clear with this? And if you see the answer, clause 6, part 1 of the first schedule of the CA Act, you need to specify. Plus, you need to specify creating a website does not constitute a non-compliance, provided it is within the guidelines. Okay, it should not be on the push mode. So you need to specify what has happened in the given scenario, and he will be thus guilty, and you need to give the conclusion. Okay, this is how you need to write the answer. Any doubt till now on this question? Any doubt? Okay, if no doubt, then let us take one more good question. This is very good question that we need to understand. Just a minute. So The director discipline of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India had received the matters in respect of the cases uh, of alleged misconduct against CAK, the proprietor of Messrs. KM and Company, Chartered Accountants, and was found guilty of professional misconduct under Clause 6, Part 1 of the second schedule of the CA Act and the Clause 4, Part 1 of the first schedule of the CA Act. And penalty was imposed by an order passed against him dated 19 June 2025. Okay, so there was a case which was presented in front of the director's discipline. There was an alleged misconduct. Inquiry happened, and Mr. that is CAK was identified guilty of professional misconduct under Clause 6 of Part 1 of second schedule and Clause 4 Part 1 of first schedule. Can anyone tell me what is Clause 6 about? What is Clause 6 about? What is Clause 4 about? Clause 4 of Part 1 of first schedule, Clause 6 of Part 1 of second schedule. Quickly write in the chat till the time we continue reading. Okay. Against the said order, CAK preferred an appeal with the appellant authority on 9th August 2025 by submitting the statement of appeal along with the application form of the appeal. During such appellate proceedings, it was discovered that the said statement of appeal contained some facts which were false, to which CAK admitted it to be false and apologized for it. Based on the above stated scenario of the matters placed before the director discipline of the ICAI against CAK, you are required to answer the following. Number 1, comment on the violation of the provisions of the CA Act 1949 and schedules thereto by CAK. So first of all, you need to comment on the violation. What is the violation in the given scenario? Quickly. What is the violation in the given scenario? What violation is present in the given scenario? See, he was earlier found violating Clause 6 of Part 1 of second schedule, then Clause 4 of Part 1 of the first schedule. Now, he went for the appeal. Over there are some things, some statements or facts which are known to be false. And he apologized that he was aware about these statements and he apologized about those statements. So which clause you will apply? I will apply basically Clause 3, Part 2 of the second schedule. Remember? So when we were discussing Clause 3, just a minute, let me go back to that particular table that we prepared. A summary that we prepared if someone gives a false information or no information. Okay, at that point in time, what will be the scenario? See, this was the matter that we discussed. If you do not supply information, then it's a Clause 2 of Part 3 of the first schedule. Okay, if you do not supply the information. But if you supply the false information to the institute, earlier we talked about not supplying the information. But now if you supply false information, in that case, it's a different schedule. Okay, it's altogether a different schedule which will be applicable. So if you include any information which is false, that's a Clause 3 of Part 2, okay, of the second schedule. Understand that if you do not provide information, then the Clause 2. So do not provide info to institute, then it will be Clause 2, Part 3, first schedule. Okay, simple. If you provide false information, then or false information to the institute. Okay, and one important part that you need to understand, include in any statement written or form which is submitted, and that has to be knowingly. If you do knowingly, okay, then to be false. Like if you are aware that that is false and you include in that particular case, this clause will be applicable. That is clause 3, part 2 of second schedule. In the given scenario that we were discussing over there was some information which was provided which was knowing to be false. Like CAK was aware about that information, that this information is false information. As a result, for this particular false information, submitted to institute, clause 3, part 2 of second schedule will be applicable. Clear? So when you have to comment on the violations of the provisions of the Chartered Accountant Act and schedules there too, you will comment that what has gone wrong as per the clause 3, what is there, and you provide the analysis and then the conclusion. But there are other questions, so we'll take the other question first in the on the same thing, and then we will discuss a combined answer. So before which authority the matters of CAK would have been placed, and what maximum punishment could have been imposed on him by the said authority in accordance with the CAI Act. Now you need to specify which authority, okay, against, like in place of, in front of which authority the matters would have been placed, and what would be have been punishment. So if you say clause 3, clause 6, clause 4, in front of which authority the matter will go? Anyone? What is that authority in front of which the matter will go? And what will be the punishment that he will get? Very important. Because at times students remember the clauses, but they forget about the disciplinary mechanism that is there. And the disciplinary mechanism, it is given on the page number 19.40 of your study material. Very important chart, I would say. Very important. And if a matter, see, let's understand the disciplinary mechanism. So whenever there is a receipt of a complaint along with the prescribed fee or information against a CA member, okay, against a member of an alleged misconduct, then the first thing goes to the disciplinary directorate. And he forms a prima facie opinion whether he is guilty of professional misconduct or not.
Now connected to her.
If he is guilty of professional misconduct, then based on the schedule, first schedule or the second schedule, the matter goes in front of our authority. So if it is a first schedule, then it will be placed before the board of discipline. Okay. If the matter involves second schedule or both, the matter will go to the disciplinary committee. So in our given scenario, clause 3, part 2 of the second schedule, plus 6 and 4, they are the both schedules. So the matter will go in front of the disciplinary committee. Now, if the matter is accepted, so what happens is, it is not something that matter goes and the board of discipline will start directly. They will study the matter and they will say that, okay, whether the matter to be accepted for the inquiry or not. Once it is accepted for the inquiry, then the inquiry is conducted. And then the final verdict comes, whether found guilty or not. If after the final inquiry found guilty, okay, then there are punishment based on the schedule itself. So as per the first schedule, if there is a any misconduct identified, what can be the punishment which is there? Reprimand the member remove the name of the member up to period of 3 months, and impose a fine up to 1 lakh. In case of second schedule or both, again, same, reprimand the member, remove the name permanently or for any duration that is deemed to think fit. And third, impose a fine of rupees up to 5 lakh. So your name can be removed permanently, or a fine up to 5 lakh can be imposed on that particular member if he is found guilty of second schedule or any of or both of the schedules. If he is not found guilty, then close the matter. Simple. There is nothing further. Now, one more thing is that if the member who has been found guilty and he has been, punished with any of this or all of this or whatever the scenario is, he has a 90-day window to file an appeal. Remember that. So he can file appeal within that 90-day window. Okay. Within that 90-day window. Now, 90 days from the date of order. You can take it a date of order and you can file the appeal. Now, appellant authority can confirm, modify, set aside the order, import, set aside or reduce or enhance the penalty. Very important. Remember that. So it is not something, the appellant authority can only reduce the penalty. They can enhance the penalty also. They can increase the penalty also. Okay. They can remit back the case to the Board of Disciplinary Committee for reconsideration, or they may pass the order they may think fit. So there are various powers which are provided to the appellate authority that they can perform. So in the given scenario, the matter will be placed in front of the Board or Disciplinary Committee, and these are the fines which can be imposed to that particular member. Clear? Now, third question which is given. Has order within the time limit prescribed under the said act. Now you need to provide the time limit. See, what is the time limit which is given and when he has filed the particular, appeal. So the order was passed on 19th June 2025. He has a 90-day time window, as we discussed, from this particular date for appeal. Okay. Now, when the 90 days is getting over, can anyone tell me? When is the 90-day window getting over from this particular date? So let's say, for example, in this scenario, 19th June is the date. Okay. I will add 90 days in this scenario. And the date I get is the 17th of September. Like, I can include or like by inclusive method, I can get a date of 17th September, okay, 2025. So that is a due date. That's where the 90-day window is getting over. June, July, August, September, and accordingly, it will go to the September. He has filed the appeal on 9th of August 2025. Within the 90-day time frame? Yes or no? Within the 90-day time frame. That means he has filed the appeal within the given time frame. As a result, the question was, has CAK filed the appeal with the appellant authority against the order within the time limit prescribed under the Act? Answer is yes. You need to explain what is the time limit. Thus, he has filed the appeal within the time limit. Clear? Any doubt? Let's see the answers now. So first answer was clause 3, part 2 of the second schedule. You need to specify that. Then in the instance, he filed an appeal, contained some facts which were known to be false, therefore guilty of professional misconduct. So you need to do provision analysis, and the conclusion. Then second, if he was found guilty for the clause 6, for the clause 4, even if you say the clause 3, then the matter will go for the disciplinary committee, and these are the fines that can be imposed. Remove the name, reprimand the member, or fine may extend up to 5 lakh of rupees. Third, time limit for filing an appeal. Any member who is aggravated, who wants to file an appeal, he has a 90-day window. So he filed an appeal on 9th August 2025. Order was passed on 19th June 2025. It's a 90-day timeline, not has been lapsed, so he can file an appeal. So within the time limit prescribed, as we discussed. This is how you need to write an answer for this particular question. Very good question, because this is not on the clause specific, but also on the disciplinary mechanism. Clear? Any doubt? Any doubt? Okay. Let me take up one more question. Similar lines, we have discussed something. Okay. And accordingly, let's see that particular question. Mr. Nilesh, a chartered accountant, was the auditor of GUM Limited for the financial year 23-24 and 24-25. During the financial year, the investment appeared in the balance sheet of the company amounting to 7.75 lakh and was the same amount as the last year 23-24. Later on, it was found that the company's investment were only of 59,000. However, the value of the investment was inflated for the purpose of obtaining higher amount of a bank loan. Comment thereto with reference to the CA Act and schedule thereto. Simple, the way we discussed a similar question just now, we discussed a bit before about this particular part, wherein investment was there. It was shown on a different amount. But here there is another information which is given in the question is that he was the auditor of the company for 2 years. And the amount was same for the last 2 years. That means he has performed the audit not for the 1 year, for the 2 year continuously, and he has not verified the balance. So it makes the strong evidence that he was a gross negligent. Plus, he has signed the audit report without verifying. Okay, without he verifying the details of it. Similar line that we discussed, clause 7 and the clause 2 will be applicable. But in this particular scenario, understand one thing, that he has signed something for the 2 years. That is more evident from the given question. Okay. So as a result, he will be guilty of professional misconduct. Okay. Plus, in this case, you can also some may ask that, sir, can we apply clause 8? Fails to obtain necessary information required for the opinion. I will say yes, you can apply clause 8 also, because for the 2 years he was the auditor, he issued the opinion, but he never raised an issue on any of the part. So clause 7, clause 8, even clause 2, you can apply all these clauses in this particular answer. Clear? So quickly we'll see the answer. That is clause 2, clause 8, clause 7, okay, and guilty of professional misconduct. Conclusion. Any doubt? Okay, let us take one more good question. And this is something, another very good topic that I wanted to discuss, because it is a bit of more than the clauses that we have discussed till now. Mr. Amit is a practicing chartered accountant based out of Pune. During the weekends, he was involved as a paper setter for accountancy subject in the school in which he studied. He also owned an agricultural land and was doing agriculture during his free time. During the year 2023, heavy losses were incurred in agriculture activity due to natural calamities and misfortune, and he lost almost all his wealth and become undischarged insolvent. After few court hearings, and finally in year 2025, he was declared discharged insolvent and obtained a certificate from the court stating that his insolvency was caused by the misfortune and without any misconduct on his part. You are required to comment on the above situation with reference to the CA Act and the schedules there too. Read this question. This is very good question. Okay, covers 2-3 topics together. Okay, but you need to focus on each and everything which is given in the question. What is happening in the question? There are 2 to 3 things which are happening, and all are important. Yes. So the first part, I would say that would be easy, that we have already discussed, that he was involved as a paper setter for accountancy subject in the school in which he studied. He's a practicing chartered accountant. Okay. So he was involved as a paper setter. Now tell me one thing, paper setter, general permission, specific permission. Under regulation 190 and the annexure thereto, general permission allowed or he need to obtain specific permission? Quickly. What he needs to do? Is he required to obtain general permission? Or is he required to obtain specific permission? Or the general permission is provided in this scenario? Let us see in the list itself. Okay. So what list says? If you do a private tutorship, it's in the general. Okay. Then if you act as a valuation of papers, if you act for the valuation of papers, acting as a paper setter, head examiner, moderator for any examination, that is under the general permission. Okay, so if you act in any of the scenario, you are for the general permission. If part-time tutorship under the coaching organization of the institute, then general permission. Okay, but if you basically go for, if you have an interest in any educational institute, part-time, full-time lectureship, okay, other than relating to the institute examination, okay, part-time, full-time tutorship under any educational institute or other than the coaching organization of the institute, editorship of other than the professional journals, in that case, it's a specific permission you need to obtain. Now, in the given scenario, what he's doing is he's a paper setter of the accountancy subject in the school. So, general, allowed as a general or not? This is allowed as a generally, permission granted generally. Okay, that just now we saw that. Secondly, he is owing agricultural land. Okay, and was doing agriculture activity during his free time. There is a agriculture also involved in this particular scenario. Now, what was the agriculture? Is agriculture allowed or you need to take specific permission? Is agriculture allowed or you need to take specific permission? So if you see, owning a agricultural land and carrying out agriculture activity is allowed with effect from 9th August 2008, which is under the general permission only. So you are not required to take a specific permission. Again, in the given scenario, agriculture is also fine. So paper setter, fine. Agriculture, fine. Not an issue. Now, the next part of the question. During 2023, heavy losses were incurred in the agriculture activity due to the natural calamities and misfortune, and he lost almost all his wealth and became undischarged insolvent. And after a few court hearings in the 2025, he was declared discharged insolvent and obtained a certificate from the court stating this his insolvency was caused by misfortune. What this will have an impact? Is there any clause to this that we need to discuss, or is there any specific uh, part of the schedule that will apply in this scenario for the insolvency? What you will write for this particular part? Is there any misconduct on the part of this chartered accountant, practicing chartered accountant? Yes, no. Is there a misconduct? Will you apply any clause in this scenario? So the answer to this question basically lies to the act itself. Okay. So there are basically two provisions that we need to discuss uh, from the Chartered Accountants Act. Okay. Now, one of the provision is Section 20 of the CA Act, Chartered Accountants Act. Okay. That's the removal of name from the register. Okay, where your name can be removed. So there are grounds given, okay, on which grounds your name can be removed. So who is dead, request has been received to that effect, not pays the fees, or subject to any of the disability mentioned in the section 8. This is very important. If there is a disability which is mentioned in the section 8, okay, and who is found to have been subject at the time when his name was entered into the register of members, who at that particular time or thereafter has become the subject to any disability which is mentioned under section 8, okay, and for any other reason who has ceased to entitle to have this name born in the register, so his name can be removed. That means if once you become member and if there is a disability which is mentioned in the section 8, and if that applies to you, your name can be removed. Okay, your name can be removed from the register of members. Now, for this, we need to understand what is section 8. Disability for the purpose of membership. Okay, disability for the purpose of membership, there is a section 8 of the CA Act. There are various grounds given that a member will be debarred from having his name entered into the register of members if any of the disabilities being attracted. One, not attained the age of 21 years at the time of application. He's an unsound mind. He's an undischarged insolvent. He is a discharged insolvent and but has not obtained from the court a certificate stating that his insolvency was caused by misfortune without any misconduct on his part. So either he is undischarged insolvent or he has discharged but not obtained the certificate. Plus, he has been convicted by the competent court for an moral for any offense involving moral turpitude and punishable with imprisonment. Okay, and then if his name has been removed from the membership of the institute, being found guilty of professional or other misconduct, so disability applies. Your name can be removed under section 8. Okay, and the section 20, council is authorized to remove your name from the register. But there is something more under section 8. Okay, section 8 says that if there is a failure on the part of a person to disclose the fact that he suffers any one of the disability which is mentioned aforesaid in the section 8, is also a professional misconduct. That means if any of this thing is applicable to you, applicable to a member, because we are not talking about member in practice, this is only register of member, it is all members. As of now, do not mix certificate of practice or member in practice in between. We are talking about all member in practice or otherwise. As a result, if this applies to a member and if that member fails to report to institute about this disability, fails to report disability, then it's a professional misconduct. Again, another ground to get the name removed from the register of members. This is the professional misconduct. Okay. So if there is a failure on the part of the person to disclose the, if he suffers from any disability and he does not provide that information, it will be constituted a professional misconduct. Okay. And accordingly, appropriate, measures will be taken. And any which ways, there is a clause 1 of part 2 of second schedule. We'll go to the clause 1 of part 2 of second schedule quickly. Just a minute. So clause 1 of part 2 of second schedule specifies that if there is a violation of any nature, okay, by the member, it's applicable to member in general. Okay. If there is a violation of any nature of the act, rules, regulations, okay, the provisions of the act, regulations, guidelines issued by the council, in that particular case, he will be held guilty of professional misconduct. It is again applicable to generally. So provisions of provisions of the act means section 8 also. There is a violation of section 8 that you were supposed to intimate, but you did not intimate. Again, another ground of, you can say, of being guilty of professional misconduct. As a result, let's go back to the question and discuss once again. So what is the question? That he was undischarged insolvent, that is a ground of disability in section 8 for 2 years, from 23 to 25, because in 25 he was declared discharge insolvent and obtained a certificate. So after 25, fine, there is no disability, but there is a disability from 2023 to 2025, which he did not report. As a result, section 8, professional misconduct, plus clause 1, part 2 of second schedule. But for the first time, you have seen in the revision that a professional misconduct coming from section 8, a section like, provision of the act. We are applying provision of the act and saying that it is guilty of professional misconduct. Okay. But again, if there is a contravention of any provision of the act, guidelines, or the regulations issued by the council, clause 1 is going to apply any which ways, and the person will be the member in general, whosoever, whether in practice or not, for the purpose of contravention, he will be held guilty of the professional misconduct. Clear? So if you see the answer, again, we will start with the clause 11 under regulation 190A. We will provide what is there, that under the permission granted generally, these are the two parts which are already given. Therefore, for this particular purpose, do not make him guilty of professional misconduct. Perfectly fine. But when it comes to the discharge insolvent or undischarged from 23 to 25, section 8 requires that member is required to inform. Okay. And his name can be removed for that specified period. And he is not entitled to have his name entered in the register until expiry of such period. Okay. And if he is found, okay, that he has not reported, failure to report on the part of the person is a professional misconduct. As a result, in the given case, Mr. Amit was discharged insolvent. He also obtained, but he violated section 8 for that particular period. After that, he did not. Okay. After that, after 25, he did not violate any provision because he obtained the certificate. As a result, after 25, he is not debarred from having his name entered. But before 25, he is. And accordingly, for that particular period, you can say he can be held guilty of professional misconduct. But after that, not, because in 25 he was declared discharged insolvent. But the moment he is undischarged insolvent, he has to report. Clear? Any doubt till now of any of the part that we have discussed? Okay. See, my advice to all the students is that please practice as much as you can. Read the study material, see the lectures, practice, take part in the mock test paper organized by the institute. You have a lot of avenues available to practice the questions. Write the mock test papers. It will provide you a practice for the exam, and accordingly, you will be able to understand the concepts more easily. Until and unless you are not practicing, you are not reading the study material, you are not visiting the LVC lectures, uh, it you may lack the clarity that is required to write the answer. The subject is quite easy. Okay, it's a logic based subject, just it requires practice. So please do that practice. Okay, bring up of your doubts, whatever doubts you have, ask as many doubts as possible, and accordingly, you will identify that you are able to understand the concept, you are able to remember the things, you are able to write the answer that is required. Trust me, it's quite a logical subject which is there. Okay, you can ask as many doubts or as many times you want. There is no restriction on that. If again any doubts, no. Okay, if no further doubts, then uh, thank you guys. Thank you for participating in today's session. Okay, practice well, and you can ask any of your doubts if you have in the next session also. Thank you. Ashok ji. Yes. Thank you. Good night.